Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo.
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz, and
Hello.
this week we're here with a couple of artifacts that we want to tell you guys about. I know Adam's covering one that many of you folks have heard before, and I'm covering one that probably no one has heard of before.
I have certainly never heard of your topic, and mine's interesting because even though it sounds like it's a single, there's definitely multiple artifacts I'm going to be going over and kind of telling the tale of, so it'll be interesting. I'm going to be covering the Legend of the Crystal Skulls.
Is it about like the Legend of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
No, not at all. God, I hate that movie. Never seen it. Anyways.
You've never seen it?
Why would I watch a movie that was universally hated by everyone who loved Indiana Jones? What I have done is anytime I've ever had the urge to watch that movie, I have instead watched The Last Crusade and been nothing but happy about my decision. So, yeah, that is 100% true. Robin, what is going to be your topic?
So I'm going to be covering the Bygone Pipes, which are these ancient pipes in China.
Right on. So I believe I'm going to be going first, so that'll be fun stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. So this week, I really wanted to cover something that had like a legend behind it. That's where like the inspiration for my topic came from. And I had just the thing in mind. There are plenty of legends about houses and areas and
Hidden
cryptids
temples.
and people, hidden temples. There's so many things you could cover, but there is one that became so famous that it made its way into an Indiana Jones movie. And if it weren't for the conversation we just had and the title of the episode, you might be sitting there thinking, is he going to cover the Holy Grail? Is he going to cover the Ark of the Covenant? Nah, dog. We are talking about the Crystal Skulls, the fourth best Indiana Jones movie.
The fourth best. You
So,
mean just the worst.
The worst.
It's not even at all.
I've not seen it, so I can't compare it to Temple of Doom, but like, I enjoyed Temple of Doom, so I don't think that I would enjoy. I've seen bits and pieces of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I just didn't like it at all.
Shia LaBeouf in that movie.
I mean, it's kind of hard not to hate him in general.
But like, it's cute because you're bringing back old characters, you know, and it's just older indie. But I just can't stand Shia LaBeouf. I don't know why. He just rubs me the wrong way.
Well, FYI, for anyone who is an Indiana Jones fan, I believe they just wrapped production on Indiana Jones 5. The Legend of Dr. Jones's Bones, I think is what they're calling it, because that guy is just a fucking skeleton wrapped in wax paper at this point.
Is Harrison Ford actually in it?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah, he's totally in it.
Wow.
So
okay.
I'm not sure what it's about. I'm sure it'll be good because it's Harrison Ford. I said that about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I've still never seen it, but
you should watch it just to watch it.
Anyways, I will watch it at one point. So the first time I remembered hearing about the Crystal Skulls, not in regards to that movie, was around 2010. It was during a conversation about the 2012 Mayan calendar, what a lot of people back in 2010, for those of you who don't remember, were referring to as the 2012 apocalypse that was supposed to happen. I've covered fake apocalypses before. I don't think I've covered 2012 yet. I think I covered Y2K, but it'll definitely be fun to cover 2012. If I haven't, I forget sometimes what I've covered and what I haven't. But the person I should say, that I knew from back in Northwest Indiana was convinced that the world was going to end unless it was stopped. Whatever this apocalypse was could be stopped by gathering together all of the Crystal Skulls. This matches some of the books that were put out around this time from like 2008 to 2010, which stated that 13 Crystal Skulls needed to be gathered, and somehow that would prevent whatever apocalypse had been predicted by the Mayans, and that's why they had their calendar end on that specific day. And I was just not sold on it. It just sounded like conspiracy theory bullshit, which isn't crazy to think because this is the same guy that I talked to who was convinced 100% that the blue reflectors that you see on the roads, how there's red reflectors and then you see a blue one every now and then.
Yeah.
The blue reflectors, according to him, were put there by the government to deactivate any car that was built after 1979 or some shit like that. It had to do with a computer chip being in your car, how they could just turn your car off if they wanted to.
For those that don't know, the blue reflector on the floor means there's a fire hydrant.
Yeah, if you didn't know that, anytime you see a blue reflector, just look left and right and you will see a fire hydrant in one spot, because that is exactly what they're for. So before that, I had heard of the skulls because of Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I thought that there was only one, and its entire purpose was to ruin the franchise of Indiana Jones, which it had successfully done.
Did you think it actually ruined the franchise?
Every person I knew that had seen it, that had grown up with Indiana Jones, were sickened by it. The guys who make South Park made an episode where they compared what they did to Indiana Jones to rape.
What?
The entire episode is
not.
a bunch of scenes of Indiana Jones from other movies where it's like they splice Indiana Jones in, and it's like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg taking advantage of Indiana Jones because they were so upset about how bad that movie was. So it's not like I'm alone in my trepidation to watch this movie or in the fact that I've heard a lot of people say they really hate it, but we're going to move away from the Indiana Jones stuff and into the actual legend of the Crystal Skulls. So here's how I'm going to handle this topic. I'm going to cover the supposed lore / legend behind the Crystal Skulls. I say supposed because no one knows where it originated from and when it started being told, but I'll give you an idea of when folks think this sort of kicked off.
Aliens.
Then I'm going to break down which Crystal Skulls are known to exist. So, according to legend, these skulls, which don't look like alien skulls, they look like human skulls.
Oh, okay. It's not like the elongated ones. Okay.
These skulls are said to have powers, or they can provide powers to the owner or the wielder, like an artifact from World of Warcraft or some shit like that.
Okay.
Or an Angreal or Terangreal from Wheel of Time, if you will. So
you lost me.
It's okay. Basically, it's an object that you can hold that has power within it that can grant you power if you're holding it. And healing is one of these powers. The power to heal yourself or others is something you can get from holding one of these objects. Again, supposedly. And healing isn't the only power that it can grant. It can give the user psychic powers. So if you're a muggle and you hold this thing, all of a sudden you'll have psychic abilities. I don't know how far that goes. Maybe it's Detect Thoughts level 1. Maybe you can dig a bit deeper than that. If you already have latent psychic abilities, it will enhance them incredibly. So if you're a psychic and you hold this or one of these, you'll be
super psychic.
You'll be Charles Xavier, basically, is how I'm reading into this. So
okay.
It is said that the skull abilities to do this are quote-unquote evidence. Like, there's no proof they can do this. But because the story says they can, that's proof, that's evidence that they came from, were handled by, or created by extraterrestrial beings. So, sort of like the snake eating its own tail, except the snake is just a big turd, because it all sounds like bullshit.
What the
Because it doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, this thing we can't prove that happens, it's proof this other thing that's even more of a reach is true.
That been caught on camera, a snake eating its own tail?
I'm not talking about a snake eating its own tail. I'm talking about the fact that a lie feeds into another lie, and they use each other as proof that the other one exists.
Okay.
So I'm not speculating at all on the snake eating its tail, which is, by the way, the ring of the Aes Sedai in Wheel of Time. Anyways, we're going to keep moving forward. So, of course, the idea that these things have powers and the fact that it's unproved sounds like bullshit. Some folks believe that the Crystal Skulls can produce miracles. One of the people we're going to talk about later in the episode actually stated that she believed that it could provide you visions and would cure cancer. So definitely something that's going to be sought after or add to the legend of the Crystal Skull.
It's like the Holy Grail.
Yeah, a little bit. Has that same feel to it, right? She actually stated that in one of the visions she saw, which was in like 1935 when she said this, like the abilities, later on in life, let me go ahead and back that up. She stated that you could have visions and cure cancer with this thing in like 1935. She didn't die until like 2007. She's a very old lady. At some point in her life, she stated one of the visions the Crystal Skull gave her was the assassination of John F. Kennedy.
What?
Supposedly before it happened. She didn't state this before the assassination.
Okay.
She did state after the fact, like, oh yeah, I knew that was going to happen. So like the Monday morning quarterback kind of thing, the hindsight is 2020. It's kind of what popped up here.
All right.
Another thing where it's like, see, I'm proving that it works. So there was no shortage of books to read on this subject on the old Internet Archive. There were, of course, books written about the Crystal Skulls and the 2012 apocalypse, but rather than diving into that, because those are really about the apocalypse, and the Crystal Skulls are just kind of like this, I don't know, Deus Ex Machina that's tossed into this idea that the world would end then, I decided to look into stuff that was more about the Crystal Skulls themselves. And it was interesting for me because the books that discuss the origins of these crystal skulls have very different takes on where they came from, but it really comes back to two things. One is extraterrestrials, which we've spoken of, and they're not very detailed, just that extraterrestrials put them here, or they bestowed them to some civilization way in the past, and then they sort of scattered. That feeds into the second theory, which is the one I'm going to discuss.
I mean, there are so many alien theories. Even my topic has alien theories. It's all about the aliens.
It's like ancient history or ancient aliens or whatever. If it's something you can't figure out what happened, there's someone around that's going to yell, aliens.
Hell yeah.
So the book that I'm going to talk to you guys that I read from, not read 100%, but read from, is The Message of the Crystal Skull, from Atlantis to the New Age.
Okay.
Yes.
For those of you
right.
that don't know, Atlantis is the lost city.
It's supposedly a city, in some cases a full continent that sunk to the bottom of the sea, that had this super advanced race of human beings that just sort of vanished and no one knows why it went or where it went or where it was.
We all know where it went. The bottom of the ocean.
Pretty much. Unless you believe this theory that I'm about to tell you. So this book is a trip, man. It talks about the fact that Atlantis existed, Avi. And,
it says fact?
Yeah, and how Lord. It's known among certain folks in the scientific community that Atlantis was a place they just don't find it interesting to research. It talks about how advanced Atlantis' technology was and how it far exceeded anything that we even have today. And that they were basically running their cities. They were powering their cities by crystals. So I
Specifically, crystal skulls.
No, not necessarily. Just crystals. I'm picturing pylons like the Protoss in StarCraft. Okay. Like everything had to be built near a crystal, but some people had crystals that did different things, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there was like a hover bike that was a crystal that looked like Marty McFly's hover bike, but some people had skulls that, I don't know why you would make a skull to heal someone. It doesn't really send the right signal. But yeah, it's this idea that the Atlanteans had this sort of technology to use crystals for things. And the end of Atlantis, according to this book, the cataclysm that took place, has a date, a specific date, June 5th, 8498 BC. So
before Christ.
Over 10,000 years ago. That's a long time ago. And according to this, a meteor came in and wiped Atlantis off the map. According to the calculations of the authors, they compared the meteor strike that supposedly took place 9,000 years ago, 11,000 years ago, to the Tunguska Blast of 1908, which I covered in episode 102.
Oh, nice.
To remind you, the Tunguska Blast actually happened. It was an event that was essentially a meteorite that came into Earth's atmosphere and exploded before it actually made contact with the ground, and it put out the amount of energy that I think the number is 185 Hiroshima bombs would have put out. And that bomb was devastating, so 185 of them would certainly be catastrophic if it had taken place over a population center. Luckily, it did not. It took place over wilderness that got absolutely decimated. So they take the Tunguska Blast and they state that the meteor that came in, according to them, was 200 million times more powerful than the Tunguska Blast, which would mean it was the power of 37 billion Hiroshima bombs, came in, wiped Atlantis off the map, somehow didn't really affect any of the other continents, and they used the fact that the Gulf of Mexico has multiple meteor strike sites at the bottom of it as quote-unquote evidence that this happened. It also kind of makes it sound like, but doesn't explicitly state in any of the passages that I've read, that Atlantis existed in the Gulf of Mexico, which would make it significantly smaller than a lot of the legends state. It was like this continent between America and Europe, or America and Asia, because that is such a massive portion of land there. And the fact that it got hit in the Gulf of Mexico and vanished makes me feel like it was just part of the American continent, right? Like the Gulf of Mexico was created by this meteor hitting it.
So you're telling me Atlanteans are Americans?
Hell yeah.
America.
There you go. We're descendants of Atlanteans. I didn't realize it. So, let me make a long story short. Atlantis takes this direct hit, doesn't necessarily sink as much as it just vaporized and becomes rubble. And the Gulf Current, which apparently still existed all this time ago, basically sweeps away all the artifacts and the remnants of the Atlantean kingdom and drops them in different places that have some sort of body of water that connects, in most cases, rivers.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's just not how the water flows.
Right.
Like, the ocean doesn't flow into the rivers, but these people just really wanted to have this theory, so whatever. But anyways, it's either aliens or Atlanteans that created these, and they've somehow made their way into our culture by being rediscovered. Or were they?
Okay.
All right.
Where's this going?
That's the legend, supposedly. Let's talk about the skulls that actually exist. And as we talk about them, we'll talk about the tests that have been done on them and run on them to determine what abilities they may or may not have and the origin from which they came. There are 4 known crystal skulls that we are going to talk about in the world today. There are certain claims that others exist in private collections, and those collectors refuse to have them examined.
Because they're not real.
No, I'm sure they just don't want other people to get their fireball powers or whatever the fuck power they have. I feel like they're basically all
Fireball powers like Mario?
I'm just picturing each one as a power-up from a video game, and the 4 ones that we've located just have been like tapped out, and then they're on cooldown.
One is, the Tanuki leaf,
Yeah.
and one is the fire flower. I don't know what other ones there are in Mario.
Extra life.
Oh,
One's the
yeah.
star, like you just hold it and it goes doo 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 doo.
Oh,
And that's
yeah,
just,
that's
it doesn't
right.
actually do anything. It just makes you flash like a strobe light and makes that noise.
Sometimes you just want to be your own strobe light.
I always want to be my own strobe light. You know what, people out there? Be your own strobe light. And if you can, be someone else's strobe light. Today we were at the mall. We were walking around. There was a light that was like shining in a corner of a JCPenney.
It was flickering
and it was
so
flickering,
bad.
so I just stood in the corner and let it flash on me like I was at a rave. It was so much fun. All right, 4 known crystal skulls. We're going to talk about all of them, so we should probably get into it. The first one is the Mitchell Hedges skull. This one is the most famous. This is the one that is referenced in, apparently, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Bullshit.
You can't call it that.
So this skull was said to have been discovered by Anna Mitchell Hedges, go figure, in 1924. Anna stated she discovered it buried under a collapsed altar inside a temple in what is now Belize. Other folks present during this time, because this expedition did actually exist, state that they did not see the skull, they did not see Anna recover any sort of artifact, and they're not sure that this ever took place.
So they're calling her on her bullshit.
Pretty much. The story of the skull being recovered wasn't really pushed by Anna originally. It was really propagated by F.A. Mitchell Hedges, which is Anna's adopted father. F.A. Mitchell Hedges, I don't know what the F.A. stands for. I thought about looking it up, and I was just like, I like the initials. He wanted that, I'll just go with it. F.A. Mitchell Hedges was an English adventurer. I don't know how you get that fucking title.
Money.
Adventure, yeah, it's pretty much.
Pretty much.
It's like the opposite of philanthropist. It's like you use your money to do a bunch of stupid bullshit. English adventurer, traveler, and writer. And he used his reputation and his writing ability to spread the tale of how she had acquired this crystal skull. And it was in basically both of their possessions. They had both examined it. Now, this first skull is made from a single block of clear quartz. And it's roughly the size of a small human skull. So not like a full-blown human skull, but a little bit smaller in proportion. I didn't want to say child skull because that sounds morbid, but basically, yeah. The lower jaw actually attaches. It's like you could take it and be like, I'm a skull.
So technically, it's not one solid piece then, right?
Well, it appears that it was originally carved from one solid piece. According to, and we haven't talked about the experts who've looked at it yet. We're just talking about
quote-unquote experts?
The Mitchell Hedges that have looked at it. But the bottom jaw can move. So this is like an action figure with like the Kung Fu grip.
Okay.
It was inspected in the 1970s by a freelance art restorer named Frank Dorland. Frank evaluated it as having been carved without the use of metal tools. He stated there weren't any scratch marks except for traces of mechanical grinding on the teeth specifically. He suspected its teeth were chiseled using a diamond tool, and while he suspected that its creation could have taken place between 150 to 300 years ago, he speculated it could be up to 12,000 years old. Where Frank got that number from, I don't know. I'm guessing some dollars that were put into his pocket so that he could say that to the public in the 1970s.
I was going to say, there are tools these days, maybe not the 1970s, but they could have carbon dated it or something, right?
There's things they could have done, and as you say that, they also had tests ran from Hewlett-Packard. Yeah, those guys that make really shitty computer peripherals and printers. HP wound up taking a stab at figuring out this
say
skull.
that, but this monitor right here, your monitor that you bought.
That's not mine.
Is it mine?
Yeah.
This monitor that I bought has lasted me forever.
I'm just saying, I bought an HP printer that died within a week. I bought an HP webcam that would not work and would only show me the video upside down. And if I clicked it to like reverse the image, it would just flip it horizontally and not vertically. HP makes some pretty shitty products, so I'm happy that you got one of the good ones. We're going to keep moving forward, though. So Hewlett-Packard decided they were going to investigate whether or not this crystal skull was real in the 1970s.
That's where they invested their money, not in the printers.
They sent it to their crystal laboratory, which is weird that they have one of those.
What? Okay.
They determined that it was a single piece, that the bottom jaw and the main skull were a single piece that were carved at the same time.
And it must be from the marbling or something, right, of the crystal?
I don't know how you determine. I think you just lick it and see if it tastes the same. But that's about all they really determined in their crystal laboratory. So your crystal laboratory kind of fucking sucks, HP. Still, the nature of the story came into question very often, and Anna Mitchell Hedges, the supposed discoverer of the crystal skull, turns out to have finished out her life, the last 8 years of her life, in Chesterton, Indiana, right next to where I grew up. I've been there so many times. The fact that she was there when I was there means I could have popped by him and like, yo, dog, what's the story about the crystal skull? And heard it straight from the horse's mouth. But then I might have said, like, it sounds like bullshit, because I was kind of rude back then. Record came out, actually, that an auction was held in December of 1943, an official auction that sold an item matching the description of the crystal skull. So you might think, that's a little bit weird.
So she sold it.
But where did it come from? Well, it turns out that the auction held in 1943 had one person who purchased this crystal skull that went by the name of F.A. Mitchell Hedges. So the guy who propagated the story about the crystal skull being discovered way back in the day, those stories came out after he bought it at an auction.
Wow.
She didn't actually discover it, and that's what came out from this whole thing. So this started to really be doubted because of this. And then in November of 2007, Anna Mitchell Hedges passed away. Her husband, Bill, took the skull and went to the Smithsonian because the crystal skulls had become pretty famous by 2007. They wanted to do a documentary on it, and whether it was just morbid curiosity and he wanted to see what they were going to say about it, or if he actually told them, like, yeah, run all the tests, or maybe he thought the world was actually going to end in 2012 and was like, yeah, figure out what we need to do to prevent this. He let them basically take this thing and run all these sorts of tests on it. They used ultraviolet light and a high-powered light microscope. They also used a scanning electron microscope to analyze the skull. What do those do? I don't fucking know. Don't ask me. I'm not a scientist.
That's funny because in my script, I also say, I don't know, I'm not a scientist.
Thank God. So it was determined with those tools by smart people that at the time, the Mitchell Hedges skull had been carved with a high-speed, hard metal rotary tool. Something like a Dremel, basically.
Okay. Gotcha.
It was a metal tool, despite the fact that in the 70s, Frank said that there was no metal scratches that they could see. And also a hard abrasive was used on this, so a metal tool and a diamond was used to craft this.
And a diamond?
Yeah, both of which, exist that human beings can use. It's not Atlantean specific. After a review of the type of diamond tool that must have been used, it was determined that the skull was probably created or carved in the 1930s. This is not a 12,000-year-old artifact. It is a 1930s replica, is basically what they came out and said after they checked it.
Of course.
And then the question became, what is it a replica of, aside from a fucking human skull? But it's interesting because the British Museum has a skull, a crystal skull of their own, and they've had it since the 1800s. And they put theirs on display in 1898. So the most famous skull isn't the first one that went on display, basically. It's one that was inspired by the next one we're going to get into, which is the British Museum skull. Again, there will be pictures of all four of these skulls on our Instagram/Facebook. The British Museum skull first showed up in 1881 in the shop of a man named Eugene Bowman, who most people at this point think created all of the crystal skulls to basically pass off as artifacts to make some fucking money.
Really?
So Eugene Bowman was a Parisian antiquarian, which means he dealt in antiquities. He had been trying to sell this particular skull that's now in the British Museum in Mexico. He traveled to Mexico and he tried to sell it as an Aztec artifact, but no one there was buying it. They just didn't think it was true. He did wind up selling it in North America, in New York, in fact, to a guy named George Sisson, who showed it to some scientists and they put it on display in 1887. He then sells it to Tiffany & Co. at auction Yes, Tiffany's.
Like the Tiffany blue Tiffany.
I don't know what Tiffany blue Tiffany means.
I mean, like Tiffany blue, that the box that your Tiffany jewelry comes in.
Like the Tiffany company that makes super expensive jewelry?
Yeah.
Yes, that company is the one who bought this particular crystal skull. They wound up selling it to the British Museum in, I think, 1897. That's why it wound up going on display at the end of that particular century. It looks strikingly similar to the Mitchell Hedges skull. It is slightly larger, and its lower jaw does not move. It does not have the kung fu grip. The British Museum examined the skull, and this is like in the 1900s, and then again multiple times after the fact, and they confirmed it was made with modern tools, like immediately, and it was not authentic to this supposed legend that was sold with. It is displayed as, quote, probably European, even though it's said to come from like Central and South America. It's displayed as probably European, 19th century AD, end quote, and is described as, quote, not an authentic pre-Columbian artifact. Like, they're displaying it as this is confirmed bullshit, basically. Yeah.
But they spent money on it, therefore
still
they need to show it off.
Cool, and it still feeds into this crystal skull legend, which people have heard of. So if this is the one that was the inspiration for the copy, and this one's fake, are there ones out there that could be real? Well, there's also the Paris skull. Guess who lived in Paris? You forgot his name. That's okay.
The Parisian artist guy?
Yeah, Eugene Bowman. So
Eugene
this skull
Bowman
was also in the company of Eugene Bowman, who sold it to a man named Alphonse Pinart. His name looks like Pinart. Every time I see it, that's what I want to say. It has a hole, actually, that's drilled in the top of the skull all the way through the center. I feel like whoever bought this thought they were going to hang it from their Christmas tree. Its jaw also does not move. The one that has the moving jaw, I believe, is only the one that was created in the 1930s as a replica, where they're trying to like make it fancier.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you just want to take a skull and be
exactly. It's currently displayed.
You can't see my hands, but I'm doing.
You can imagine what she's doing.
The motion with the mouth.
It's currently displayed at a museum in Paris known as the Musée des Gaules Branly. I don't know if that's pronunciation proper,
I
but
just feel like I'm in Paris right now.
I know.
This is great.
Here's a baguette. Enjoy that. It has been examined in 2007 and 2008 by France's National Center for Research and Restoration in French museums, which is a pretty fucking cool thing to have.
Yeah.
They basically just go around and see, like, what can we make better that we know is authentic, and what can we research if we don't know if it's authentic or not. Or they know it's authentic and they want to research more. Whatever, you get the picture. After 3 months of examination in 2007 and 2008, it was concluded that the Paris skull was, quote, certainly not pre-Columbian. It shows traces of polishing and abrasion by modern tools, end quote. So another thing that came from Eugene that was basically probably made by Eugene. Another thing they did was use a particle accelerator to test it, which I didn't know you could do. I thought it was just a big tube where they shot two particles at each other, but maybe you just throw a fucking crystal skull in there and see what happens.
I didn't know you could do that either.
It was revealed that there were traces of water that were found in it, which could be dated. You can water date things, not just carbon date, but water date things. I don't know how. Don't ask me how, but it's a science thing.
Someone who's a scientist out there, let us know. It sounds cool.
And when they water dated it, it was dated to the 19th century, so around the time that this thing would have been sold by Eugene. Due to all the factors being combined, the Paris skull was determined to be created in the late 19th century, so it was definitely not 12,000 years old, as Frank was saying these things could be. Which leaves one more skull. Our last hope, the fourth skull, the Smithsonian skull. If anyone's seen it, you probably already know what I'm about to say. But will this be the skull that confirms the legend? Do people who have tested it have the ability to heal or have psychic powers? Or talk to fish? I mean, if it's Atlantean, I would at least expect that.
There's a new Aquaman movie. Yeah, I didn't realize
there's going to be a new Aquaman movie coming out. Before I tell you, here's something interesting. It's how the Smithsonian skull arrived at the Smithsonian Museum. It was actually received in 1992. It wasn't donated way far back when, like these other ones, and it was sent via mail, and it was sent anonymously. But it had something with it that said it was an Aztec object, of course, that was given by the mysterious donor and was stated to have been from the collection of Porfirio Diaz, who is my great-great-grandfather. Bet you didn't know that. He was the president of Mexico for 31 years.
Oh, are you like...
Which is a long
You're not
time.
even lying?
I'm totally lying. He's
okay.
I mean, I could be related to him. We look he kind of looks like my grandfather, actually. But it's a JK. What's funny, though, is my other grandfather, I think his great-grandfather ran for president of Mexico almost at the exact same time this guy was president of Mexico. This is a true story. So my great-great-great-grandfather was a Spaniard who ran for the president of Mexico and was poisoned and killed while trying to become the president of Mexico. That is a true story. Yeah, I'll look that up one day and tell you guys all about it because that is true crime. And it sounds kind of interesting. But anyways, Porfirio Diaz had quite the collection of rare artifacts gained from the time he was president. I mean, you just sort of get stuff when you're president, apparently, in the 1800s.
Do you just steal it from other people, or
I think
you just,
when you discover stuff, you just decide, like, yeah, just bring that to my mansion or palace or whatever, and I'm just going to keep that on display. The idea that a crystal skull would have wound up in his collection is certainly interesting, and it is plausible. It is also the largest of all the known crystal skulls, weighing in at 31 pounds. Like, this is a big boy. After study, it was determined that it was created by something called carborundum. I know you're probably thinking carborundum sounds like something from like the bottom of the sea that the Atlanteans used, or maybe in deep space.
It's unobtainium.
It's also known as silicon carbide. So is this some space age thing that we've only just recently learned about, or is it some bizarre concoction from the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico? No, it's not. It's a modern abrasive for shaping stones and crystals that has been mass-produced since 1893.
Wow.
So, again, sorry to disappoint you, but the Smithsonian actually displays this as, quote, a modern fake, end quote, of the supposed crystal skulls. So, does this mean that the entire legend is fake? Well, probably. Let's be real here.
That's so sad.
But it's a bit weird that these museums are so proud of these fakes that they all display them.
Think about it. You've spent so much money to obtain this item.
Well, this one was just given to them. The Smithsonian's was 100% just donated.
Really?
Yeah, these other folks bought them. But they're displaying this as just like a known fake. And I feel like what they're really doing is just kind of showing to the world, like, we have these things found. They're ready to go. They're basically infinity stones, you know, and the legend says there's supposed to be 13, I'm pretty sure.
Collect them all.
And they already have 4 of them. I've read legends of 7, 10, 12, and 13. I think 13 is the most popular one.
It's like the Dragon Balls. Once they get them all in one place, then they can make a wish.
Yeah, they're just like the Dragon Balls. Once you pop, the fun don't stop. I'm pretty sure that was Dragon Ball Z's slogan. So
I'm pretty sure the dragon was like, one wish. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what he said. So let's be real about this. All 4 of the known ones are very fake and were identified through modern technology as being obviously created in the late 19th century, which does honestly undercut this whole legend pretty hard. But who knows? There could be other ones out there. There could be something in a private collection right now. You could go to one of these countries. You could go to Belize. You could accidentally trip over something in the dirt, dust it off, and it could be a crystal skull that was buried there, maybe unearthed by like a recent earthquake or something. And if that happens, I want you to reach out to us and let us know immediately, and then we'll all go to the Smithsonian wherever together, and we'll just get this thing tested so they can tell us that it's fake. But that, my spooky friends, is the legend of the crystal skulls.
Wow. Thank you for that huge story / pile of bullshit.
I thought you were going to say huge disappointment. I was going to say, you're welcome.
Okay.
All right, before we move on into Robin's topic, we're going to take a quick commercial break.
All right, welcome to the other half of the episode and the second, or I guess, fifth artifact of the episode?
Technically, yeah.
All right, so this week I'm going to be covering another out-of-place artifact, also known as Oopa. OOPA. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's how you spell Oopa.
Yeah, I think I've heard that before, right?
We have covered that.
Oopa Loopa Dumpity Doo.
Oh, God.
Is that how that goes?
We covered Oopas in general context a while back. I don't remember exactly what episode. I didn't look it up before I did this, but if you want to know more about them, please go back to that episode and listen to that. Control F if you're using an internet browser. Scroll all the way down to the bottom.
Which is what Robin could have done.
Anyway, this particular Oopa is the Bygone Pipes. And it's not necessarily a singular artifact because it is like a series of pipes. But these pipes are a little bit of a mystery themselves. And these pipes, also known as the Bygone iron pipes or the Dalinga pipes, are located near the White Mountain, which is Mount Baigong in China. And they are a set of pipes that are supposedly, I guess they're connected to 3 caves. And these caves are within the White Mountain, and they're said to be like the front face of the mountain. But I say supposedly because 2 entrances of these 3 caves are collapsed, so you can't really get in there. But there is one large opening that is still open. Only the main and largest of the cave mouths are still open. This opening is about 6 meters high, which is around 18 feet. And it's big enough for people to go in. Obviously, 18 feet. If you're 18 feet tall, you're a fucking giant. Where are you at?
You said it's 18 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they'd barely have to duck their head. I mean, it'd be a little bit cramped, but if you're 18 feet tall, you'd still be like, oh, that's a pretty nice cave.
Yeah. You'd be like, oh, hey guys, 10, fucking 12 feet down there.
I mean, if you're like 20 feet tall, you'd be like, this is bullshit.
There are 2 pipe-like structures that stem from this largest cave. One of these pipes is around 40 centimeters in diameter. That's about 16 inches. That's over a foot in diameter. It's a pretty big pipe.
That's thick.
It's a thick-ass pipe. One of them is like a reddish-brown color, and then there's one that's like a half pipe. Not like big enough to skateboard on, but it's, it's like a pipe that's cut in half. Anytime I hear half pipe, all I think of is literally the half pipe in skateboarding. Or
I'm
whatever.
just picturing Tony Hawk. He's the one who's responsible for this entire thing.
Yep. There are dozens of other upright pipes or pipe-like fixtures that range from 10 to 40 centimeters in diameter, which is about 4 to 16 inches in United States measurements. Which is, by the way, like the measurements, the inches and feet that we use here in the US. We just learned this week that there are only 3 countries in the world that use inches and feet, because
United States, Myanmar, and I can't remember the third.
So yeah, these series of pipes, they like kind of like protrude from the mountain as well, from the top of it. From above where the large cave is. Apparently, the top of the mountain is also like the shape of a pyramid. And this resemblance is something that has led to speculation, of course, because these strange pipes and a pyramid. I mean, why not conspiracy theorize, right? You can.
I mean, you can just make up bullshit whenever you want.
Right? It's like, man, the guy's hat's pointy. Conspiracy theory.
He's got to be an alien.
So, but 60 meters high. That's how high this pyramid is. This tip of this pyramid. It's pretty freaking high, 60 meters.
Yeah, it's like 180 feet,
you could pretty much touch the sky. It's so tall.
I hate you so much.
But I would kind of believe in this strange conspiracy theory if it wasn't a fucking mountain. Mountains, when they're created, generally have peaks, So,
yeah.
If you want to believe that it's ancient aliens or something because it's a pyramid, you can go ahead and do that. According to the interwebs, there are similar pipe formations in and around the Tuosu Lake that is also in China. This is actually near like the foothills of the Himalayan highlands. And it's a saltwater lake that is home to Halomonas bacteria. There's a doctor or a scientist out there who's like, what the fuck? That's not how you say that. And you're absolutely right. But this bacteria is like in the same category of bacteria as Salmonella or Legionella, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Legionella is the cause of Legionnaire's disease, right?
I don't know. Is it?
I assume, because it just says Legion in the name. I have made that leap.
Isn't that about that X-Men character?
Legion, yeah.
Yeah.
He's fucking super powerful.
Yeah, he's all about that Legionella.
It all ties in, and I'd had the thing about the Infinity Stone, so.
Oh, yeah.
And Charles Xavier, and yeah.
Oh, man, yeah, teamwork. High five. This episode's all coming together now. So that's cool. This lake is infested with this bacteria. What has confused researchers about this whole thing is that it has a close proximity to a freshwater lake. So why would these pipes be put in a saltwater lake? that leads to the caves, you know? So if they're transporting water, why salt water compared
Was it
to,
always a saltwater lake?
And that's the question. No, I have no idea, actually. Some think that the whole water thing had to do with electrolysis, because when you put electricity through the salt water, it breaks it up into hydrogen and oxygen and science, I guess. But that's something else entirely. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how electrolysis works, but that was a theory that the interwebs has put forth. So this lake is located about 80 meters or about 260 feet from the largest cave in the mountains. So it's really not that far away. I'm pretty sure the law says you have to turn on your turn signal out here in the US like 300 feet away from where you want to turn. So that can't be that far.
It's been a minute since I took that test, but I feel like that's still far.
Is it far?
Yeah, I think that's
Or
braking. I think that's
Oh, is
braking
it braking?
distance.
Okay.
For like a semi,
I
it takes
wouldn't
3
pass
football
the
feet. I
written
don't know.
test if I took it now. Just saying. Anyway, so this lake, 260 feet away from the mouth of the cave, on the shores of this lake, only about 40 meters from the cave, there are like flat-lying, hollow pipe-like structures that are found. And these pipes are also that reddish-brown color. The diameter for this particular set of pipes ranges from 2 to 4.5 centimeters, which is very small. I mean, I think the little charms, my keychain charms that I make are like 5 centimeters. So if it's 4.5 centimeters, that's fucking small.
Have we discussed what these things are made out of?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So
You say pipes, and I'm thinking different things, but I've seen the pictures that you sent, so I'm very curious to find out what those things are made out of.
So the pipes that lay on the shore go in like an east to west direction, and I'm sure as these are ancient pipes that were probably used by some type of ancient civilization or something, maybe it had to do with the sun because it's east to west, you know, or something like that. Who knows? Maybe it had something to do with the flow, you know, how the water flowed at that time.
The tide, maybe, how it comes in.
I don't know. I don't know anything about being an ancient civilization because I didn't live there. Maybe in a past life. Who knows?
I mean, to the civilization that's going to show up in like the year 3000, this is an ancient civilization.
Imagine if they came in here and they're like, there's this figure. It's a girl that has long hair and they have it in a high position. Do you think it's like
a deity they worship?
Yes, right.
It's like, no, it's a Hatsune Miku figurine that Robin just has on top of a bunch of stuff.
So there is another group of pipes that seem to look as if they're coming vertically out of the lake. It's not exactly sure where it comes from vertically from the ground. Like if it lays horizontally underneath and then comes up or something like that, it's not really sure. Like verified completely. So this saltwater lake is like 260 feet away from the cave. The freshwater lake or body of water is only 300 feet. So it's like, why would you? That's the whole confusing part between the two.
Gotcha. Maybe they got them mixed up.
I mean, how do you mix that up?
It's a pretty big fucking
install
mistake,
pipes?
but still.
So these pipes have objects that have kind of been associated with them. And there are things that have been described as rusty scraps or strangely shaped stones. And analysis of this material at a local smelter resulted in a report that said these rusty scraps consist of 30% ferric oxide, which is oxidized iron, and then large amounts of silicon dioxide and calcium oxide. And these oxides are the result of extensive interactions between iron and the surrounding sandstone. So because of this, the interaction kind of points to the existence of these pipes dating back thousands of years.
I think that this person they took it to had something to do with it.
I don't know.
Do you know why?
Why?
Because whoever smelt it dealt it. That's why.
The interaction points. Fuck, I already read that, you stupid bitch. By the way, for those that don't know, a smelter is one who smelts, not in, stupid fart joke ways. Smelting is the process of melting down ore to extract a base metal out of it.
We've all played World of Warcraft, okay? We get it.
So you get like silver, iron, copper, things like that when you smelt down
You take
ore.
your pickaxe, you hit the ore deposit, you get the ore, you take it to Iron Forge, you melt it into bars, or you smelt it into bars, then you use those bars to make, I don't know, some shitty armor no one's gonna buy.
All I know is ore from like Maple Story. So
Interesting.
there was 8% of the material that could not be identified apart from the other materials. So using this process, it seems like 8% of it is unknown, you know? But maybe it's just a flawed way of trying to figure out what material makes this pipe.
It's weird that there's a large percentage of it that's unknown material.
Well,
though.
8%.
That's significant.
Is that large out of 100%?
If someone checked your DNA and they're like, 8% of you isn't human, would you feel comfortable with that?
I'd be like, what am I?
Exactly. Which is exactly what people are asking about this stuff, because it's not just a regular pipe. 8%?
It's like curiosity.
8% is a huge number.
I mean, if I tip at a restaurant 20%, 8% is not that much.
This is a completely different type of thing. You're comparing apples to oranges.
Both delicious fruits. Okay. So the downside to this form of analysis is that it really doesn't label the exact minerals that kind of comprise the composition of this main material. It's kind of like percentages of oxides, and that's it. I didn't know any of this about metallurgy. Like, there's so much that goes into the different metals. Obviously, like these oxides that I have no idea what they do. You know what I mean? So there's like your little knowledge nugget. Lots of shit goes into metal.
Yep, there you go.
So according to the oxide quantities, it's possible that the calcium present in the analyzed material could be calcite, which is naturally occurring in concretions, and those are formed through the precipitation of mineral cement found within sedimentary rock or soil. So I guess there's spacing in sediment and things like that, and I guess what happens is mineral seeps into these gaps and creates concrete. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I think it's absolutely interesting how the world forms, you know, how all these materials form. Geology is cool. I swear, I took it. It was fun. I was talking to Adam earlier while I was researching, and I was telling him about halite, because halite is salty because it's rock salt. And it's a crystalline structure, but it can grow into huge crystals. So we had to identify like these different materials when I took geology class. And I can't tell you how many times I saw kids lick this halite because there were two minerals that look so similar. And one is salty and one is not. One's a fucking rock. But it's really interesting. I don't know.
I think it's funny how many kids are just willing to, like, I'm just going to lick this thing. Could be poisonous, who knows?
It's a final. You just go around, you see these little tiny rocks. And but yeah, so now you know. If you're interested in rocks and stuff, if you're interested in a topic like this, I think it's cool if you took a geology class. They're pretty interesting. Anyway, according to the interwebs, the pipes were discovered by scientists from the United States, apparently, that had originally gone over there to kind of look for dinosaur fossils, and they came across these pipes instead. This initial discovery was reported to local authorities in Dalinga, but weren't taken seriously initially. And later on, this person named Ye Zhou appeared on some news show in June of 2002. And then that went on to be discussed by local officials and journalists. And then it went on to local government. And then it began to get kind of advertised as a tourist attraction. And there are now lots of road signs and tourist guides that take people up there to check out these pipes.
Hey, you want to check out my pipes?
Yep.
Come with me in my van.
What if people are like that? Please don't just jump into people's vans.
Yeah, I would never get into someone's van if they said, do you want to check out my pipes?
The Beijing Institute of Geology used radiocarbon dating to show that these iron pipes date to around 150,000 years ago. Humans are thought to have inhabited the area in the last 30,000 years. even then, in the last 30,000 years, those were like a nomadic group of people. So it wouldn't have been people that wanted to drop pipe into the ground. Why are you giggling?
I want to know who laid this pipe.
God damn it. So complex human societies didn't start showing up until about 6,000 years ago in the area. And these pipes, supposedly having existed 150,000 years ago, make it seem odd that they're there.
No shit.
Yang Jie, a reporter at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, believes that the pyramid structure may have been constructed by intelligent beings, aka aliens.
God, I hate it.
Now, the sad part of any of these topics is the possibility that, as Adam would put it, it is all bullshit. And according to an article published in 2003 in Xinmin Weekly, Chinese scientists use atomic emission spectroscopy on the pipes. And what they found was that these pipes contain organic material, particularly plant material. So they found signs of like tree rings within these pipes. And because of the organic material, it led to the belief that these pipes are just ancient fossils of trees or tree roots that have kind of hollowed out, you know? Apparently there's this geological idea that tree roots can go through a process called diagenesis, and it's where soil turns into rock. So the natural things like the tree roots can turn into rock. I didn't know that was a thing. I don't know if that's real, but apparently that's something that scientists have put forth as possibly a reason why these things exist.
It's just like, so we think there's a process by which trees can turn into rocks and hollow out, and that's where we got the pipes from. It sounds like people all over.
It's a pseudo-widow.
I hate you so much. Pseudo-widows aren't like that either. They're not hollow. It just sounds like people are just making shit up to try and figure this out. I'm kind of leaning more towards aliens on this one, though.
Yeah, I want to say it's aliens because there's so many of them. And, okay, so that being said, in 2007, a news article was published about an investigation by someone from the Chinese Earthquake Administration, and this report stated findings that some of the pipes showed signs of being highly radioactive. So some of these pipes are really radioactive, and I wonder what it was or is that is making these pipes radioactive.
It's the 8% that's missing right there.
It's the aliens, man. You know what I mean? I want to know what caused this level of radioactivity, and I want to have the pipe material broken down like mineral by mineral, like atom by atom. Not you, Adam.
I got it, yeah.
But yeah, I think it would be so cool if someone could just take a piece, I don't know, break it apart, do something.
I don't know how you discover that there's 8% that you can't even explain what it is, and you're just like, yeah, we're just going to leave it at that. Like, they're not going to try and dig into it any further. I think
when it comes to that form of smelting, they take out the materials that they can, and then whatever else doesn't come out of their, process, that is what is considered unknown. It's like this extra material that they can't take the base minerals out of. So it's like, this is unknown. I don't know what it is. Y'all figured it out. But yeah, so because these pipes are so out of place and don't necessarily belong to any particular local area, it's safe to say that this is indeed an out of place artifact. It just doesn't belong there. There are no other pipe systems like this in and around like the surrounding area separate from this set of pipes. And because of these, it's kind of become a local legend that Mount Baigong is the site of an ancient extraterrestrial laboratory. Maybe.
Interesting.
Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I just want to know what these pipes really are.
Yeah. It's very interesting that carbon dating puts them back 150,000 years. Because that's a long, long time.
Someone carbon date me.
I'm guessing it's like season 50 of Alone. By the time we've invented time travel where they're like, we're going to go to our toughest location yet, 150,000 years ago in the middle of a mountain.
That'd be cool.
That's how they have to figure it out. And someone's like, I think I'm going to make like a chimney out of some like plant material. It's like 8%. I don't know. I'm just going to gather some stuff up. I'm guessing. That's my guess right there. Or it's aliens. Or it's bullshit. I don't know. This one's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of tests run where it doesn't seem like it's bullshit. It seems like they're actually that old. And they actually have this composition that makes it seem like they're organic in some way, shape, or form. Which is weird. And I don't know where they would have come from. Yeah. So, very interesting. Intriguing, Robin.
It is very intriguing. I had no idea these existed, and I kind of want to see them.
Same here. All right.
I want to touch it.
Cool. 200 patron goal. We'll go to China and check this out.
No way. That's got to be like 600 patron goal. That'd be so expensive.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what we can do with those patron goals. But either way, good job.
Thanks.
All right, so I think that's pretty much everything we have for episode 220 of Scaryish. If you have a story you would like to submit to us, doesn't have to be about crystal skulls or laying pipe. You can email storytime@scaryish.com. That is our email address, or go to our website, scaryish.com. Click on Contact Us. If you fill out that form, it comes directly to us. When you hit send or submit or whatever the button says, you can hit us up on social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Twitter is @scarishpod, and Instagram is @scarishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $1. At $1, you get ad-free. Ad-free is the way to be, as Adam would say. And if you're not into the monthly donation type thing, you can also go to coffee, ko-fi.com/scarishpodcast. Those are one-time donations. And we're really thankful to have all our patrons and everyone who's donated to us and kind of made this show possible. We really appreciate you.
Indeed we do. So thank you one more time for everyone who listened, everyone who donates, everyone who just participates in the community. You guys are all amazing, and we really appreciate it. So that is everything we have for episode 220. Robin, go ahead and do your thing.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.